I watched you. How do you love first? When? It's a great phrase.
Yeah.
To live it out. God took me through the ringer and I'm better for it.
Yeah.
Like better for it. Because I look back and say, oh yeah. I mean, how many times did I share? What we're called to do is love.
Yeah.
That's what we're called to do.
Yeah.
We're not going to reply. We're not going to fight. We're going to love.
Yeah.
We're going to love. And I don't know how many times I said those phrases and I didn't believe myself because it wasn't based on my feeling though.
Yeah.
It wasn't based on my opinion. It was anchored, grounded in our map and our mission. That's everything.
Yeah.
So in a season where I didn't feel like it, where my opinion was vastly different, it was anchored. Jesus calls us to love.
Well, welcome to the Advancing Leader podcast, where we equip leaders to accelerate the mission of the church. My name is Bevan. I serve as our campus pastor at our Du Bois campus here at Tri-County. I'm here with Chris, our lead pastor, and we're talking leadership today.
Yeah, I tell you, this entire series that we're in, I think is super helpful for us as church leaders, but I think it's so important for all churches to really think about this framework.
Yeah. So we're in this series of podcasts where we're talking about our game plan, which is simply a guide to thrive as church leaders. So last time we talked about the map, and we are going on to the mission, which is the unwavering focus on the why of God's church. So why don't you just break down the 5 M's that make up the game plan real quick, and then we'll come back to mission and really get into it.
Yeah, so the 5 different components of the game plan are map, mission, method, mindset, and mandate. All really great M words.
Yes.
And so today we're looking at mission, which is the unwavering focus of the why of God's church. And what's interesting is, right, the map, our doctrine that guides and unites, all anchors into the mission. Mm-hmm. And most of this, most churches, most church leaders understand. But it's interesting that even though they understand it, it doesn't really mean that they're living it out.
They're doing it.
Yeah, they're putting it in action. I mean, there's a ton of churches that just, they would, even in some of the stuff we're going to talk today about mission, they're going to be like, oh, yeah. I mean, they have these words memorized.
Yeah.
But they're not living it out.
Yeah, it's almost like they're defining the way they're going to execute the mission, but they just keep redefining that without actually starting the execution.
I think that's a great insight.
Yeah.
And it's like I know, eat fewer calories and exercise daily, I'm going to be healthy. I can say that all day long.
Yeah.
But you know, those double stuffed Oreos and sitting on the couch.
Yeah. Way easier.
Feels like so much more fun, right?
Yeah.
As I actually got on my bike yesterday.
Yeah. So like Chris said, part 1 was map. And if you haven't checked out that episode, I just want to encourage you right now, pause this podcast, go back and watch that one, because everything in this game plan series is really going to build off of each other. Kind of like Chris said, the map builds right into the mission, which goes into all those other M's. So yeah, we're on the unwavering focus on the why of God's church. And I think, just one insight I was thinking of while we were processing the why is something you've mentioned before, which is, we don't want to just let people know what we're doing. We want to talk about why we're doing it. You and I have had many conversations, and you've had conversations with our staff team. It's like leadership is so much more than just the what. It's easy to get somebody to do something, but long term, you really have to get people to buy into why you're doing it. Yeah,
and the why is so important because people naturally want to go to what.
Yes.
And what we'll get to in the third part of the game plan series, which is method. Method is all about what.
Yeah.
But what we continually try to help people understand is the method is step 3, right? It's step 3 of our game plan.
Yeah.
Our map and our mission, those two combined together develops our method, right? How we go about accomplishing our why.
Yeah.
But the why is everything, because once you have such great clarity around why, the method becomes easy.
Yeah.
The method becomes really easy.
Yeah.
Because it just lines up with the map and the mission. So this mission tied to the map, right? Our entire mission is tied to our doctrine, our map that unites and guides. All lays out the framework of around our method.
Yeah.
Which again, we'll get to.
Yeah. No, but I think it's important because, again, so many people can almost flip the process, the order of that process. You know, they'll focus on their method, make sure it ties into their mission instead of saying, okay, here's our mission. We can figure out what, and we can even change what, but we have to stick with why, you know, from the beginning.
Yeah. Simon Sinek wrote this book, which I would recommend everyone reading it. It's called Start With Why. You could actually YouTube. He's done talks on why, and you know what? We'll post this. The links, you can get that at advancingleader.com. So we'll post these links. I would recommend all of you to watch anything on Simon Sinek around why and his book.
Yeah.
And I mean, it comes from not a biblical perspective, but the why is the why.
Yeah.
And it's so critical because again, most people want to start with what, and that's where they get it wrong.
Yeah.
When you start with why, what you're really clarifying that driving mission of what you're really about. You know, we talk about, you know, even great companies that understand their why, they grow and thrive, even in polarizing time, right? And the companies that get caught in their method, they will always die, die. It doesn't matter when.
Yeah.
So our why, maybe we should just jump into this.
Yeah.
Our why that drives everything is Jesus.
Yeah.
And then you're right. Just as I'm saying it, you get this big smile. I get that, you know, I'm like, yeah, it's Jesus. But do you know how many times I had someone just 2 weekends ago, I knew that the series we're in was going to create some angst because people weren't sure what I was going to say in the series, right? And I had this awesome couple come up to me afterwards, and you know, he owns a company. They're sharp individuals. They love what's going on here. They came up and they literally articulated, one, we were very nervous about what you were going to say. And I love that they said that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was very nervous.
Yeah.
Like, but you know, the second thought, which again, I laugh. They're like, but you just anchored the whole thing with Jesus. And it was not a shock to them that I anchored it to Jesus. They know me by now.
Yeah.
But from their other church contexts, that they've been part of other churches and they've only been part of Tri-County for a couple of years, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
And that's a common story from people coming from other churches into Tri-County. They're like, man, you guys talk about Jesus a lot. And I've always been part of churches that talked about Jesus a lot. But there's a lot of churches that don't talk about Jesus a lot. And it's amazing and that's why you go back to the doctrine, right? That guides and unites. It's all about Jesus. God's hope of the world was to send God the Son to this earth to become man, to die for all people so that all people could have a relationship with God the Father. The whole storyline of the Bible goes to the cross, right?
Yeah.
And then Jesus, he is alive now, and he puts in motion the church to tell all people about Jesus. Let's not overcomplicate. And I think so many people on their spiritual journey, if they're not intentional, overcomplicate the mission that God made the most simplistic.
Yeah.
Jesus. And now, if you name Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you should tell everyone about Jesus.
Yeah.
It's not complicated. I mean, I find myself on the weekend, I did this last weekend. I'm talking about Jesus's love for everyone. And I'm like, man, we talk about Jesus and love, right? We have our phrase love first. Like we talk about that a lot. And I'm like, Chris, you're talking about it again. And then I'm on stage talking out loud, right? So I'm talking to everyone, but I'm having this internal conversation in my mind going, man, Chris, you're talking about Jesus and love again. I'm like, well, yeah, because the Bible is filled, I mean, especially like the New Testament part, about Jesus and love, right? That's it. So we're just not going to complicate something that God didn't intend to be complicated.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I was just thinking that as you were saying that. I mean, it's one word. It almost seems like the Sunday school answer. Like 90% of the questions you get you asking, like, you know, when you're a kid, you could say Jesus and you're probably right. But I love the simplicity. Like, you're right. It's not this complex thing. And I think sometimes we love to overcomplicate or over intellectualize. And like, we want to have this, you know, very complex why that goes, you know, super deep. And it's just like, simple's better. simple is easy to understand for us and for other people who are walking in the church for the first time.
And faith systems, no matter what the faith system, they're all complex.
Yeah.
Even the Jewish faith construct, how overcomplicated they made it.
Yeah.
Right? They went from 10 commandments, 10 laws, to some 600 and some laws. Plus, they had laws for those laws and descriptions of how to live out those laws or how they did. It was the most complicated system to follow God. Right? And we just have to stare at that. And over again, through Jesus, God just simplified the entire step. It's through Jesus.
Yeah.
And he's full of truth and he's full of grace. So don't complicate it.
Yeah.
But guess what we do?
We complicate it. Yeah.
So it is the answer.
Yeah.
Jesus is the answer.
So there's the why right there. When you talk about people taking that step on their faith journey of naming Jesus the subject of their life, and now you say, well, you should be telling everyone about Jesus. I think there's these two concepts that we have in church, especially words that could be considered, church jargon. They're evangelism and their discipleship. And I think just like you talked about, we're in a polarizing time. I think these two phrases create tension because usually whenever you say one or the other, there's people that gravitate towards either one.
Yes. Two massive silos.
Yeah.
And there's churches where we're discipleship. And as soon as a church says we're about discipleship, their next statement, out loud or at least in their mind, it's usually out loud. They fire a rocket at what they perceive as the evangelism church. So the discipleship church says we're about discipleship, going deep. And then they fire the rocket at the evangelism church and they're like, and all they care about is numbers. That's a statement. I've heard it every church context I've been in, every city I've been in, every church size I've been in. That's it. Then if you're the evangelism church, you do the same thing. We just want to tell everyone about Jesus. And then they fire the rocket at the discipleship church and they say, all you care about is sitting and going deep.
Yeah.
Right. And it's always with disdain in their voice.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Going deep. You're all about numbers.
Yeah.
It's been fired at me here at Tri-County Church. You just care about numbers. You don't care about discipleship. And I laugh because I'm like, it's not evangelism or discipleship. We're not picking. Evangelism is discipleship and discipleship is evangelism. They go together. It's why Matthew 28 is the framework, which Matthew 28, our mission is linked to our doctrine. And Jesus made it so clear. He said, go, action. And I say it to people all the time. Your faith journey isn't about you sitting. It's about you moving forward. There's action. He said, go and make disciples, which means they weren't disciples.
Yeah.
Right? You can't make disciples of Jesus if they're already disciples of Jesus, right? You start with the premise of going, okay, you're going to go and make disciples, which means they don't know Jesus. Then you help walk with them in their spiritual journey until they name Jesus as their Lord and Savior, to name Jesus as the subject of their life.
Yeah.
Then Jesus goes on saying baptizing them, which is another step, right? The baptism is the outward expression of the inward transformation, change of naming Jesus the subject of your life. So baptizing them, and then he goes on and teach them. Teach them. Teach them to obey all my commands. Teach them to obey all my commands. Well, what were Jesus's commands? Love God, love people. Simple. Right? Truly love God. Put him first. And when you do that, you will love everyone. Everyone. Right? Just simplify it. And so it's not about evangelism and discipleship. Discipleship is evangelism, and evangelism is discipleship.
Yeah.
And people just want to put them in two silos. They want to check their box and they want to hold on to it. I'm like, no. It's what it is. And when I evangelize to someone, to share Jesus with someone, I'm compelled to walk with them to help them understand what it means to love, live, and lead like Jesus. And oh, by the way, leave behind a legacy, which is more people to love, right? Yeah. I'm compelled to do that, right? Just to, you hear about churches that they show up to, a park, or they go to a city and, we spent a whole weekend telling people about Jesus. I'm like, yeah, you told them about Jesus. Mm-hmm. What are you doing about helping them live a life reflecting Jesus?
Yeah. That's big.
And so we are committed to walking with people on their spiritual journey.
Yeah.
That includes both. And they're not exclusive. It's not like we're going to pick one or not the other. Mm-hmm. It's about both.
Yeah. Well, I think with this conversation, we're talking about polarizing topics. I think with any conversation where there's tension and there's things on opposite side of the spectrum, you always look to the middle, and that's probably where you're going to find the truth. I think a conversation we had as campus leaders a few weeks back, and we were trying to decide what we were going to do in light of some things related to the coronavirus and coming back to church. And I remember Laurel said something that I just loved. We were trying to make this decision, and we had some people that were, hey, we should do this. And then we had other people who were like, we should do the exact opposite of that. So very, very different points of view, very different perspectives. And she goes, I just been trying to think of what Jesus will be processing, what he would be doing, and where he would be. And I really think he'd be somewhere in the middle, just sitting with the tension. And I think that's the same thing with this conversation of evangelism and discipleship.
Which I love that story, right? Because that's the beauty and the power of the body of Christ, the church.
Yeah.
People will naturally lean, in this conversation towards evangelism or towards discipleship, to use those, right? Just naturally bent, naturally gifted. But that's why we need each other, because when we're together having conversation, when we're together encouraging each other, when we're together leading together, when we're together, right, your perspective and my perspective and Laurel's perspective, right, it leads us towards that middle space, right? Just like truth and grace.
Yeah.
Some people are more truth heavy. Yeah. Some people are more grace heavy. And that's why we need each other to try to find the balance, because Jesus was full of 100% of truth and 100% of grace, and none of us are Jesus. I don't think.
Nope.
Okay, good. I'm glad we cleared that up.
Yep.
Right. But that's why we need each other.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm leaning, which I'm more of a grace person, so if I'm leaning more on the grace side, I want someone to say, yeah, but there's truth, Chris. And truth, there is consequences.
Yeah.
There is impact when you go against what God has designed, right? And on the opposite side, when someone just wants to levy the hammer on the truth side, it's like, well, yeah, but there's still grace. There's still grace.
Yeah.
And how do we between truth and grace, how do we lead in the messiness of both of them?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with evangelism and discipleship. No. Yeah, in the middle, it's going to be messy, because, right, people has different points of view, different perspective, and how God's wired them, and all of that. But that's where we need to be.
Yeah.
That's where we need to be.
Yeah, I think the beauty in any topic that you're discussing is, if your why is Jesus, then you just look to where Jesus is, and that's where you're going to find, again, the middle. You're going to gravitate towards where he's at. So,
well, that's our pursuit.
Yeah.
Our pursuit is to live like Jesus, to reflect his life.
Yeah.
And that's why understanding your doctrine, right? To understanding who Jesus really was and how he lived here on this earth is so essential. And I get in conversations all the time, and people say statements like, well, I feel, or my opinion is, and I always, and not everyone likes me at this moment. I'm like,
yeah,
but is that anchored in the Bible?
Yeah.
Is it anchored? Because at the end of the day, what I feel and my opinion doesn't matter when I'm sitting in front of God one day, giving an account for my life.
Yeah.
And I just always bring people back to, well, we can argue, and this is going to get into method in part 3, all the time. People want to argue method. And I'm like, but do you even understand the map and the mission that anchors our method? So let's talk about our map and mission. Then we can get to method. And people don't want to, because their opinions and their feelings can run rampant in the method.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start anchoring them to the map, the doctrine that guides and unites, and our mission, our unwavering why, the church was designed to tell all people about Jesus.
Yeah.
That's the movement.
Yeah.
And until everyone knows Jesus, the church,
we're not done.
We're not done.
Yeah.
Right. And that means not just to check a box that you got saved.
Yeah.
But it's to know Jesus, to love like he loved, right?
Yeah.
Live like he lived, lead like he led, and leave behind what he left behind. Like we keep coming back to that, going, no, that's what knowing Jesus means.
Yeah.
And that I'm committed to walking with people in the pursuit. And oh, by the way, I'm 47 and I'm still discovering what it means to live a life reflecting Jesus.
Yeah.
And God kicks my backside all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
Right? We've just led through a very difficult season. And to love first, it looks great on a t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Love first looks great as a hashtag.
Yeah.
Love first is a great one of those, like, yeah, right. But to live it out when people are firing rockets, to not to retaliate, not to try to fight back, not to, in a culture, in a world that says you better fight back.
Yeah.
I watched you. How do you love first? When? It's a great phrase.
Yeah.
To live it out. God took me through the ringer and I'm better for it.
Yeah.
Like better for it. Because I look back and say, oh yeah. I mean, how many times did I share? What we're called to do is love.
Yeah.
That's what we're called to do.
Yeah.
We're not going to reply. We're not going to fight. We're going to love.
Yeah.
We're going to love. And I don't know how many times I said those phrases. And I didn't believe myself because it wasn't based on my feeling, though.
Yeah.
It wasn't based on my opinion. It was anchored, grounded in our map and our mission. That's everything.
Yeah.
So in a season where I didn't feel like it, where my opinion was vastly different, it was anchored. Jesus calls us to love, and love looks like. That's what God's going to hold us accountable for.
Yeah. And I think that's why, the language around mission, the unwavering focus.
That's it.
Unwavering, just like you said, no matter what your feelings, your emotions, whatever you're lensing through, unwavering focus on the why. And I love, we're not the first church to say Jesus is the why. They discovered that way back in the first century when Jesus gathered a group of people, poured into them for years, and then when he left the earth and ascended into heaven, he's like, all right, you guys know the why. You got to go do this now. I think that's the beauty of it. This is a message. This is a why that didn't just pop up. I mean, it's existed forever.
But that unwavering, right? I'm glad you brought us back to that word, the unwavering why, because unwavering implies into it, there's going to be a lot of things that's going to try to make you waver, right?
Yeah.
It's going to push you off. It's going to try to slow you down, drag you down, shove you, put you in a box, get you disillusioned, right? It's unwavering. Like this world and Christ followers are going to try to shove you off the unwavering why. Paul, I shared about this incredible moment in Acts 17, and it said that Paul had left to go to Athens, where he waited for them. Well, right before that, and I didn't have time to get into it, why did he go and wait for them? Well, because the Jewish believers in, I think it was Berea, ran him out of town. He fled for his life.
Wow.
So they sent Paul away because they were coming out after him. So he runs to Athens while the rest of his party, I think, probably tried to
calm it down. Yeah.
Then they met him in Athens. But Paul gets to Athens, and what does he do? It's one of his greatest moments on Mars Hill because he realized his unwavering why. Just because he got ran out of town.
Yeah.
He was like, my mission is Kingdom of God mission.
Yeah.
It's not going to change. No one can push me off of this.
Yeah.
So he runs from his life from Jewish Jewish well, Jews. They weren't believers in Jesus. To Athens, were completely pagan.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll seize this moment.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Unwavering why.
Yeah, new town, same why. New day, same why.
Run from your life? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going.
Same why. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, so I think, we talk about Paul in his missionary journeys and his just desire to connect with people, no matter what their context was, no matter what their beliefs were, no matter what their culture is. And I think we have a great framework, like I said earlier, for the start of the why, the early church, the early group of believers that Jesus entrusted with this mission. And now, this mission is carried forward to modern day, where we get to carry that mission together with the people that we lead with. And I just think it gives us such a great framework. And you talked about the book of Acts and all these amazing moments of when just the why of God's church continued to move forward through all sorts of circumstances and seasons and trials. I just think that's incredible to think that a mission started so long ago could continue to keep its power, to keep its importance centered around what we do every single day.
Yeah, when you think about the book of Acts, and I've said this a lot, especially recently, is if you really want to know how the early church, the very first church, took the why and put it into action, which is method. Mm-hmm. Read Acts. Be a student of Acts. Watch. What were their hiccups? What were their downfalls? I mean, Peter, who was with Jesus, still didn't grasp that Jesus came for everyone.
Yeah.
Didn't. He didn't want to go to those Gentiles.
Yeah.
And God had to go to great lengths to remind and create some tension within Peter and say, no, for everyone, Peter, for everyone. And that's why the book of Acts is so powerful for us to actually, here's the doctrine, right? To actually understand how they took the why, Jesus, and the method they developed to tell everyone about Jesus. And so when we think about it, Acts 1 was all about you will be my witnesses. Acts 2, the believers gathered together and the Lord added to their number daily those being saved. I go back to there. The church was designed to grow. Mm-hmm. Why? Because the church was designed to go to make disciples, meaning people that don't know Jesus now know Jesus, and now you're walking with them, right?
Yeah.
So daily, those being saved, meaning those who didn't know Jesus, and now they do know Jesus. And so churches should be growing, and we should celebrate church growth. And when someone goes, well, it's all about the numbers, I'm like, fine, I'll take that. I'll take that any day. If that's the rocket you fire at Tri-County Church, great. We are all about the numbers of those being saved, and those we now get to walk with on our life path.
Yeah.
Our life path is all about walking with people on their spiritual journey to help them learn what it means to love, live, lead, and leave what Jesus left behind. Right?
Yeah.
So Acts 2 and 3 is all about that. And then we go into, they had one message, right? I wish I could preach one message. Peter and the apostles, right? You killed the author of life, but God raised him from the dead, and we are witnesses, right? Over and over again. By Acts 4, the believers were huddled together, and they prayed for courage in the face of massive opposition. I love that prayer. They prayed for courage. Not for God to take away the opposition, not for God to protect them in their little home. Like, no, God, in the face of it, give us courage, which I think is one of the most powerful prayers as believers. God, give us courage.
Yeah.
Right now, what we're leading through, there's been dark moments.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be a way easier prayer to be like, God, please just fix this or take this away.
Yeah. Give us a vaccine now.
Yeah.
God, like just deliver it like manna from heaven. Just, but it's courage.
Yeah.
Right? It's courage to lead. I'm so excited about where we're going as a church in the face of this unprecedented season, because the impact years from now, we're going to look back and see what God did.
Yeah.
It's taking courage from all of us to say, in the face of it, we're going to lead better, stronger, more aggressively. I mean, it's why the Advancing Leader podcast is all about accelerating.
Yeah.
Accelerating. We're not gonna hunker down. We're not going to do it.
Yeah.
By Acts 5, the apostles were thrown in jail. Acts 6, Stephen was arrested. Acts 7, Stephen was stoned. The apostle Paul was actually overlooking his death. Acts 8, persecution scatters the church. scatters the church. Again, God can use anything. He can use a pandemic. He can use persecution and other P words that we don't like, right? He uses those moments. Acts 9, Saul, who was killing Christians, now names Jesus the subject of his life. And what happens when you name Jesus the subject of your life? Your entire faith journey goes into acceleration mode. It's just what happens.
Yeah.
By Acts 10, Peter, I was talking about this earlier, Peter, who didn't quite get the memo about Jesus for everyone. God makes sure he gets that memo with Cornelius. By Acts 11. Gentiles were naming Jesus the subject of their life. Acts 12, James is killed. Peter's thrown in prison. Acts 13, 14, Paul's first missionary journey as he takes this message of hope to everyone. By Acts 15, this is the first church council because they were having tension over the method that got tied into doctrine. The old Jewish doctrine and the emerging Jesus doctrine. What were they going to hold on to from, thousands of years of their Jewish faith to what Jesus came to do? Right? He didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. They're trying to work that out.
Yeah.
And then you can keep going through Acts. But I love that the very end of the book of Acts, Acts chapter 28, verse 30, says, for the next 2 years, Paul lived in Rome at his own expense. He welcomed all who visited him, boldly proclaiming the kingdom of God and teaching about the Lord Jesus Christ. And no one tried to stop him. I think it's the best way in the book of Acts. No one tried to stop him. The church is unstoppable.
Yeah. I think everybody that's mentioned in this book, give everything to accelerate the mission.
Everything.
To accelerate the message of our why. Literally, people died for it. People continue to die for it. And I think that's for us to focus on that and what we're doing on a day-to-day basis to reach people in our communities, even just at Tri-County Church, but also, the church at large, we have to give everything for the why.
And that is why every Tuesday at staff meeting, we take usually an hour of just people sharing stories.
Yeah.
And those stories are about people taking steps on their spiritual journey.
Yeah.
And I love that. And we have raw people, and we have people that we share the story, and we're like, can we share those stories in church?
Yeah.
But we love it because there's people taking steps, and it keeps us all focused on our unwavering, right? It's our unwavering focus on the why of why Jesus gave his life for all people.
Yeah, I think, another phrase that we say along with Jesus as a subject is, we got to be the church. I can remember growing up hearing my dad say this phrase over and over, and, being a pastor's kid, I would be remiss if I didn't use what he was saying in a snarky way. So I remember one time my dad asked me, hey, where you been? I haven't seen you. I traveled a lot and played soccer in high school. And so there'd be a couple Sundays during the month where I wouldn't make it to church. And so he'd be like, yeah, are you going to be at church day? And we had this phrase, I was like, I don't go to church. I am the church because we're supposed to be living it out. And I remember, being really snarky about that. But this phrase does mean so much, especially in the context that we're dealing with now. So I think an interesting thought to ponder, or something that we're, trying to wrestle with, is what does it really mean to be the church in 2020?
Yeah.
So many years it's been meeting on Sundays, meeting in a building. And what we know is it's never been about the building. But what do you think, as we're trying to wrestle and navigate with the circumstances we're leading in, what does it really mean to be the church right now today in 2020?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's this tension that's rapidly growing even within churches. Some pastors standing up on stage going, the government can't shut us down, right? There's those out there.
Oh, yeah.
And Christians that are aligning with those type of pastors. And I think we as a church, we're just living in a completely different way. Government can't stop the church.
Yeah.
Government hasn't stopped it in China. The government hasn't stopped it in Iran. The government, right? There's been no powers that have stopped the movement of the church. That's why I love that last line in Acts 28. And nothing stopped them. Nothing. Why? Nothing's going to stop God's church. It's his vehicle to tell everyone about Jesus.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to, if you believe in the kingdom of God, that God already has victory and he's sovereign, nothing's going to stop his movement. So for us, we're just like, well, our battle cry isn't, government's not going to stop us from meeting. Our battle cry is, oh, God's going to use this. And it's going to make us better as a church. And we can still go and make disciples with or without buildings.
Yeah.
It actually allows us more intentionality and more focus to doing this. Think about how much time we've really talked about how do we help people. We have a massive goal right now to help 1,300 people take a step on the life path, wherever they are. Maybe it's a step onto the life path. It's a step somewhere along. 1,300 people to take a step. That is, to use the word discipleship, right? It's intentionally helping people move in their spiritual journey.
Yeah.
We don't need buildings to do that. That's why I'm sad for the pastors, the church leaders, that are making their battle cry. We're not shutting down. It's like, okay, that's your battle cry. So now what you're instilling within people is you have to have a building open for people to grow, for people to take steps.
Yeah.
If it's all anchored to a building being open, the movement of the church, right?
Yeah.
And so we're just not anchoring it to it. Is it frustrating? Sure. Are we trying to learn? Sure. Is there times where it's like, it'd be easier to go back to the old days?
Yeah.
But what's happening right now within our leaders, it's the Advancing Leader podcast.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we equip more leaders to be the hands and feet of God's church, to be part of what he is doing?
Yeah.
And that's why being the church is everything.
Yeah.
And we don't hold back. If you are a Christ follower, we say, you are part of this. You are part of God's movement. When you name Jesus the subject of your life, Jesus changes you from the inside out. Now you partner with him in what he is doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love that thought. I think it's really going to tie in well with our next episode. You think of how do you lead well in 2020, and what does that look like, and how does that tie into your why? And then you get into the method, and everything we're doing is different, but the mission's still the same. So I really appreciate your thoughts on the mission, Chris. It's just so great to talk about something that's existed for so long and just continues to accelerate. It just continues as people step up and name Jesus a subject and dedicate their lives to leading other people to that hope. Why don't you give us just a brief introduction into the method so our listeners know what they're going to be plugging into next time?
Yeah, so the phrase starts off with our map defines the mission, which guides our method, right? So the map defines the mission. So we use the Bible to define the mission, which we have, and we could spend even more time. The Bible is very clear what the mission is, which guides our method. And the method is what? And as you just referenced, our method is open-handed. We will shift it, and we're shifting it now all the time. We'll shift on a dime because our method is not something we hold on to with a tight grip. Our map and mission, absolutely. And so in our method is just all the, this is what we are doing. And the what we are doing ties into the why, which is our mission. And so many times people, again, I think this is where so much tension gets surfaced in Christian, Christ follower, church world, because all the focus goes on method. And we just try to help people understand our method is going to change all the time. We're not married to our method. We are to our mission that we're going to hold on to. And we would rather spend a lot more time talking about our map and our mission. The method is just like, well, this is what we're doing this week. 6 months ago, our method looked rapidly different. 3 months ago, when everything was locked down, it looked different. And now actually our method for the next 6 months from now until the end of the year can happen whether or not we're in green phase, yellow phase, red phase, zombie apocalypse phase, which again, I'm still a fan of the zombie apocalypse.
You're excited for that possibility.
Well, at least you can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, the coronavirus, you can't see.
That's true.
Zombies,
See them.
you can see them. You know they're there. You're like, I see them.
Yeah.
And they're loud. Usually they're loud. Depends on the editing of the... right. So the method we're going to just go and get into, there's very specific reasons, though, that everything we choose to do, our method, there's very specific reasons.
Yeah.
But those reasons, again, our method is tied to our map and our mission.
Yeah.
And we can articulate that all day long. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, me too.
It is going to create some tension.
Yeah, I'm excited for that as well. And Chris, I just appreciate your thoughts. And anyone who's tuning in, we just want to say thank you for joining us. I hope this helps you in your leadership journey. We'll see you next time.
This has been your Advancing Leader Podcast.